What's the worst anime main character ever?
I don't like Deku.
He's too positive.
And all of a sudden, he's crying again.
Tanjiro might be the most sincere anime character I've ever seen.
Tanjiro can actually empathize with anyone.
Cut his throat.
Why do some boys get to cry while others don't? In other words, why do we hate Deku but love Tanjiro? The answer to this will completely change how you view these two characters and storytelling at large. Cause I've spent weeks mulling over these questions, going back to rewatch both series to comprehend what causes the different reactions to these characters. So today I'm going to reveal how these three pillars of storytelling work together to force you to adore one of anime's top goody two-shoes while making you despise the other for the exact same reason. Ever since the latest round of Deku slander hits the airwaves, thanks to Death Battle, My Hero Academia haters and Deku detesters have been firing from all cylinders. Deku's been christened Bully Man, a street tier crusader. They even brought out the old reliables about Deku being a boring goody two-shoes with a cringe anime voice and annoying fanbase. But worst of all, he cries. Like a lot. And while some of this may be true, I've always noticed we have another mainstream MC who checks off all of these boxes but doesn't get any of the flack. In fact, he is revered, so much so that according to a 2020 survey, Japanese kids love him more than their own parents. Tanjiro. Why is this? Well, the first pillar of storytelling that feeds into this dynamic is so basic, people always undermine it. So pay attention. Its setting. The environment of Demon Slayer endears us so much more to Tanjiro as opposed to MHA does to Deku. You see, the world of Demon Slayer is dangerous because the world of Demon Slayer hosts, you guessed it, demons. Not the misunderstood types you see in Hazbin Hotel, Devil May Cry. Nah, they're the original card-carrying children of Satan, or Michael Jackson in this case. And they came to do one job: kill, and they do it well. If the average human meets a demon, they are fucked. You're gonna get your head ripped off, claws in your back, and your neck drained of blood. How do we know this? Because that's exactly what happened to Tanjiro's family in episode 1. Now, let's compare that to MHA's setting. Deku lives in a world where supervillains exist, but the average villain just wants money, power, notoriety, and doesn't really kill. Like the first villain we see in MHA is a bag snatcher, and typically when a villain threatens civilians, you got a whole heap of organized heroes ready to take them down. The world of Demon Slayer is so much more dangerous to Tanjiro in comparison to MHA is to Deku, and as a result, it's instinctive for us, the audience, to root more for Tanjiro, knowing his surrounding is much more deadly. And you can really see the difference in their settings play out in the first couple arcs, while Tanjiro faces death again and again and again in the final selection arc, the Kidnapper's Bog arc, the Asakusa arc. The biggest challenge the setting of MHA presents Deku with at the beginning of the story is just staying in school. Sure, Deku gets some pretty serious injuries, but those initial critical moments, knowing a character's life's on the line, that grab your attention and foster the seeds of love and adoration for them, just aren't there for Deku like they are for Tanjiro, resulting in an audience that has less of a reason to really ride out for Deku. This leads to the second pillar of storytelling that evokes love for Tanjiro but hate for Deku, and this will blow your mind how closely it relies on the first, the consequence. Just like the setting of Demon Slayer is so much more severe than MHA, so are its consequences. Demon Slayer enforces stiffer penalties for weaknesses, fuck-ups, and ignorance shown by Tanjiro a lot more than MHA does to Deku. And these consequences aren't random, like some strangers dying or unknowns getting disfigured. They are personal. Throughout the story of Demon Slayer, Tanjiro is forced to reckon with his inability, and he pays dearly for it. First, the loss of his family, the fact his sister's been turned into a demon, the death of Rengoku saving his life, Tengen losing an arm doing the same thing, just to name a few. This trend of Tanjiro losing someone close to him on a mission happens so often, it's a literal meme. Now, in contrast to that, MHA doesn't inflict any real personal consequence onto Deku. He doesn't lose any family members or friends, neither plot device, kid of season 3 and 4, Koto or Eri, die or are physically scarred as a result of Deku failing them. Deku does lose his powers at the end of the show, but then gets a suit which mimics them, so that doesn't really count. The closest death/loss to Deku I can think of is the death of Night Eye, and I'd argue Night Eye's death spurred on the minion a lot more than it did Deku. And that's exactly my point. When we see a character experience loss or pain because they weren't enough, but then they use those hard lessons to spur themselves on to future victories, they gain a lot more respect in our eyes. They become a lot more human. And as a result, when Tanjiro screams cutting off a demon's head or cries in a sensitive moment, we know it's not done out of nothing. It's done to honor the death of his family. It's done as a reminder of the sacrifices people have made to let him live on. Those screams and cries now carry weight, whereas in Deku's case, those shouts ring hollow. He hasn't suffered enough personally to then justify this hypersensitivity he's so often criticized for. It just comes off more childlike, worsening his perception in the eyes of the fans. Which leads to my final pillar of storytelling that creates fans for Tanjiro but haters for Deku. And this one surprised even me when I realized. The characterization. Tanjiro's characterization and personality is just more mature and realistic when you compare it to Deku's. Though I've mentioned Deku and Tanjiro being quite similar, they are also drastically different. To put it simply, Deku as a character is hope bounded by childish naivety, whereas Tanjiro as a character is also hope but bounded by the cruel reality of the world. Deku's hope for a better world in the story is largely fueled by his desire to be like his childhood idol, All Might. His room is decorated with the All Might, his costume is All Might inspired, his moves are adapted from All Might, and his dream to save people with a smile was inherited from All Might. Deku has his own identity, don't get me wrong, and MHA does a good job forcing Deku to confront the problem with his obsession with All Might. But at Deku's core, he's still that same kid from before, longing to be like his hero. In contrast, Tanjiro is his own man. His motivations aren't based on trying to be like anyone. Keep in mind, they are both 16, but Tanjiro's hope for a better world is based on experiencing the worst the world had to offer, but still honoring the lessons and teachings his loving mother, father, and siblings taught him. Chief among them, help those in need and protect and take care of your sister Nezuko. With that last lesson being what literally progresses the story of Demon Slayer, as Tanjiro tries to find a cure to Nezuko's demonhood. All his life, Tanjiro has had real responsibility thrust upon him. He was literally the breadwinner for his family before the story of Demon Slayer began. So when us spectators see Tanjiro take good care of his responsibilities, not doing so because he's idolizing someone, but because he wants to be a good older brother and honor what his parents taught him, it makes us admire him and be more willing to indulge Tanjiro in whatever emotional outbursts he has, because we feel he has earned it. So when you add it all together, from the setting to the consequence to the characterization, you get a realer feeling main character struggling against higher personal stakes, which then legitimizes that MC being allowed to cry. Please like, sub, share. Love y'all. Bye.